12:30. 12:31, October 10th, and I'm going to call to order this virtual meeting of the Colorado Ag Commission. First item of business is to identify any guests that might be online. I see that we have quite a few of our commission members online. Any guests that would like to identify themselves? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward. First thing I need is an approval of today's meeting agenda.
This is Catherine. I move that we approve the agenda for today, October 10th meeting.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Catherine and David. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion pass. The second item is I need a motion for the approval of September's meeting minutes. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those and identify any corrections or additions. And when you're ready, I'll accept a motion for that acceptance.
I'll make a motion to approve the September meeting minutes.
Thank you, Simon. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Roberto.
Thank you, Roberto. There's been a motion and a second to approve September meeting minutes. Any discussion? None. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, I'm going to open it for public comment for non-agenda items, and they will be limited to 3 minutes per individual if there's anybody who would like to make public comment. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the commissioner's report. Kate?
Great. Thank you, Colleen. It's great seeing you all, as always. Hope you're enjoying fall, and know there's a lot of hard work going on all around the state. I know as well, many of you continue to host events and go the extra mile outside of running your farm and ranch. Simon, thank you for hosting the governor at Farm and Ranch just last week, I believe it was. Just heard all around that was a really great trip, and always appreciate your and the tribe's support and supporting us and doing the tours out at your place, which I feel like we do often.
You're welcome.
So thank you for that. Yeah, and just a lot of other things going on. Looking forward to all of your updates to update us on the rest of the items. I'm currently in Durango this week. A number of things going on. We have our Colorado River Drought Task Force meeting down in Ignacio on Thursday. Just a reminder, that's the task force that came out of this past legislative session to look specifically at both inter and intrastate solutions on the Colorado River. So we're now starting to move into the interstate discussions, which just to have this on your radar, I think is where a lot of contention or concern might be about how we kind of build programs that are built for compact compliance downriver. On the intrastate side, we're looking at a lot of the things that we're already doing, both at CDA and at CWCB. Just know that there's a lot of conversation around supporting agricultural infrastructure investments, improving our irrigation systems, looking for greater efficiency, but also conservation all around, and how do we support producers in achieving those. So that's a big part of the conversation statewide. There will be something that comes out of this task force that will be presented to the legislature. So just know that the work going on over the next couple of months will influence some of the water legislation or water related legislation that comes up next session, which is right around the corner. I'm also looking forward to joining the Regional Farmers Union gathering this week down in Mancos. So I'll be catching up with a lot of folks down here. A couple of other recent and upcoming events, and Hollis is really going to get into the meat of our updates today. But as many of you know, I was in Chile week before last with the USDA trade mission. USDA actually has seats for commissioners of ag to join them on these ATMs, agricultural trade missions, to essentially advance American agriculture across the globe. So I was there with 3 other states and about almost 24 American companies, as well as exporters. Really fascinating trip, just learning the politics, the economy, the desires of Chilean importers and consumers. That was a big focus of the trip. I think a lot for Colorado's standpoint on the commodity side, you know, we do a lot of business on dairy, on feed. They pretty much import all their feed as a quasi-isolated country, not so isolated anymore, but certainly geographically, they're in a very unique part of the globe. So they're looking for lots of feed, dairy, beverages, and consumer-facing products. That was a lot of what we talked about. Certainly the consumer is looking for more of those sort of value-added goods. I would say the other thing that I'm out there trying to ground truth is our hypothesis that the more we take a leadership role as ag in climate solutions, the more market opportunities we're going to have. Chile has a nationwide carbon neutral requirement by 2050 for all their industries. So climate was just a fact of doing business essentially while we were down there. Chilean buyers are looking for growers, for exporters, for companies across their trading sort of network who have a similar shared commitment to climate. So it was really interesting, you know, as we were talking about STAR and our Drought and Climate Resilience Office and the incentive-based farmer-led work we're doing, there is really growing interest. You know, one of the quotes that stuck with me was sustainability certifications and verifications is going to become just a factor of doing business. It's not even about a premium. It's just a baseline for doing business. And that was from the pork and poultry industry group that we met with down there. So just, you know, kind of picking up intel that we can bring back to our marketing team on that front. I was down there with the Undersecretary for Trade, Alexis Taylor, who's a former ag commissioner out of Oregon. She was fantastic. She was really working on trade issues specifically with regards to policy. The rest of us were really looking at more of a broader market relationship. We were also celebrating 200 years of diplomatic relationships with Chile and 20 years of the free trade agreement with that country. Really fascinating time to be down there, just politically with what they're going through and undertaking their second constitutional convention in the last 2 years to rewrite their constitution. So lots in flow, really amazing trip. And then coming up, just this weekend, actually, Jordan is leading a delegation from CDA and from Colorado to the UK. As you all know, we've been working with the United Kingdom on sort of expanding our business relationship. And again, really focused on what sets Colorado apart. When we had a delegation from UK at our offices a few months ago, well, maybe the better part of a year ago now, you know, I asked them, I said, you have 50 states to work with. Why are you working with Colorado? And they said, in Colorado, you're innovative, you're entrepreneurial, and you're taking climate seriously. So we want to do business with you. So we're taking a delegation of, we've got Farm Bureau, we have CSU leadership, we have our House Ag Committee leadership. So Representative McCormick and Representative Catlin will be coming with us, as well as a number of CDA staff to really try and push this next chapter of that relationship with the UK. We're aiming towards sort of a formalized relationship that will help us expand business between their country and our state. So that's kind of the work on the international marketing side. A lot of exciting things going on next year as well that we have on our radar. So I'll keep you all up to date and up to speed, and happy to, you know, go into more depth on any of these markets here or offline as well. Last couple things on my radar, and then I'll pause for questions. November 1 is a key date to remember because that is the release of the governor's budget. So we're just a few weeks away from that announcement. We'll make sure, obviously, at our November meeting that you have all the information on what is in that budget. CDA items, of course, being first and foremost, but we'll brief you on sort of the whole package. And the same is true with our proposed legislation. So we're starting to work now on the legislative side, getting ready for next session. We'll have a much fuller briefing when Jordan's back in November as well on the ledge side. But no, we'll probably be chatting with you all in your communities, even between now and then, here and there on sort of ground truthing our concepts for this next session. And then lastly, November is a big month for water. There's the Water in the West conference at SPUR that CSU hosts, the C9 Summit, which brings together the Colorado Water Conservation Board, all of the roundtables, and the IBCC, or the Interbasin Compact Committee, that happens in Denver. And then another biweekly drought task force meeting. So kind of ending up where I started, lots moving on the water policy front. And we are kind of starting to hit the accelerator a little bit, getting ready for January and the start of ledge session. So with that, I'll pause there and happy to take any questions.
Okay, what was your statement? Sustainability is what? Say that again.
Is essentially a requirement of doing business.
I know. What was the phrase that you used though?
Oh, essentially like sustainability verification, like that you have, like US Soy, for example, has a sustainability certification that they can provide to their producers. That's now being required in some of their trading deals, just as a factor of doing business abroad.
Got it.
Sorry.
Elena, go. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I think that's so wonderful that you were able to do that. That sounds awesome. And I was just wondering, do you have a sense of what they were looking at as far as like their priorities for sustainability? Like what were some of the solutions, like the specific solutions they were coming up with to reach that carbon negative or carbon neutral goal, and also what they were doing specifically as far as practices?
Yes, absolutely. I actually have my list. We met with the Ministry of Ag and their climate lead. And they have a number of policies, happy to share this around, but they are focused on nature-based solutions, enhancing biodiversity, enhancing rural development. So all of these need to come kind of through the lens of advancing rural communities. Gender equity is a big part of how they're thinking about climate right now as well. They're using terms like regenerative management, animal welfare. They're looking at sustainability of the livestock industry. And the other thing that really caught my eye, because this is different in different countries, you know, how much of a regulatory arm they have versus incentive driven. And part of our value proposition from Colorado is that, hey, we're doing all this stuff, but we're doing it led by farmers and ranchers. We're not regulating our ag industry. We're letting our ag industry lead. That's not the case in every country. Like EU right now is taking a much more regulatory approach. But in Chile, they really emphasized P3s, that they're doing this through public-private partnerships. I don't know the full in and out of that, but that was mentioned multiple times, that they really want to do this in partnership. And then they have a number of, you know, pieces of legislation that I believe have passed that are sort of the frameworks and set the target around how they're making these investments in sustainability. They're also in a 13-year drought, which was very interesting. So we actually had more to share on water than I thought before going there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, Roberta.
So in terms of the public-private partnership strategy, is that mostly geared to like access to resources and funding? And if so, did you see any like parallels with kind of those kinds of partnerships and opportunities for investment funding here in Colorado?
Yeah, it's a great question, Roberto. I think I don't have enough info to go on to know where they're at, but that's one of the follow-ups, including on technology. They're really interested in sort of removing the core of this current administration, at least, is moving on from extractive industries. They're so dependent on copper, which, you know, there's obviously demand for what they're producing right now in the world, but they're interested in sort of more value-added production and manufacturing coming out of Chile, and technology is certainly something that was of interest. So when it comes to kind of how the partnerships work, I don't know, but we're working with OEDIT, with our Office of Economic Development. They're actually going back there in a few weeks to try and kind of get more intel on how they're doing business and how we might be able to either share or, you know, bring some here.
Love it. Thanks. 'Thanks,
'Thanks, Roberto. 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 'Thanks,
Yes, I second that. I would be very interested in seeing like exactly what that looks like if it's a policy enforcement thing or if it's more like an incentive program. That would be really interesting to see. And then I think, I don't know if there's any way to find out because it's hard to always measure outcome, but it's just to see how effective those are as well. So thank you. That's yeah, very interesting.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with our contact at the Ministry of Agriculture there and see if we can get more details.
Did you get the feeling that it was customer driven or just kind of how their culture is working based on the sustainability portion?
Yeah, it's a great question. Oh man, one very interesting thing to that point that I heard again from the meat and poultry sector was they're watching what the United States does from a regulatory standpoint. And a rough quote from one of the leaders of the association we were meeting with was saying that they like to sort of ride the wave of US regulatory change. So Prop 12, for example, in the pork industry, when Prop 12 passed and then when the Supreme Court upheld it, they just went ahead and updated their regulations to align with Prop 12 so they could keep doing business in the United States and in California in particular, but across the country. So I kind of see maybe a little bit of both, and they want to stay ahead of the curve from any sort of regulatory standpoint, whether it's, on the livestock industry side or sustainability side. And we were hearing a lot of consumer demand from Chile is pushing them towards sustainability as well. We did a few supermarket tours, like the Chilean Walmart we visited, and their branding's different, but sort of the consumer cross section is very similar. Like they've got plant-based sections now. They're looking for more value-added products. They're looking to sort of diversify in the consumer-facing end, and a lot of them have sort of the green label, whatever that label might be.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
One last question, Kate. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm wondering, based on that exposure to their markets, is there a similar dialogue or discourse around local and regional food systems, the way that it's kind of been formalized here in the States?
Good question. I don't know. My assumption is yes, although we didn't really get into that sort of slice of the pie. I think right now, especially with the Constitutional Convention, there's basically a lot of things on the table in terms of land ownership, water rights, where food is produced, how it's produced. I think there's other environmental factors like drought that are putting pressures on them. So all of that being sort of just speculative around, why I think it's probably part of the conversation, but I didn't hear about it too much while I was down there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Last thing I should say is that Chile, being in the Southern Hemisphere, definitely is very focused on its competitive advantage as an off-season fruit producer. So, as you know, table grapes, et cetera. And they're actually thinking that they might be able to take more advantage of that with climate change and their own climate maybe becoming more productive for those types of crops for export. So happy to answer questions beyond this. If more come up, just give me a shout and I'll see what I can get from the Ministry of Ag down there on the partnership question.
Sounds like a great trip, Kate. I'm glad you went. Moving on, Hollis for operations update.
Yes, thanks, Colleen, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Going to give you an update on our strategic plan, some hiring updates, rulemaking that we have on the near horizon, as well as some grant updates on our grants and upcoming events. But want to begin with just sharing with everybody kind of some news on some recent funding awards we got through the Inflation Reduction Act or other ARPA funding and where we're at on those. So the first one to share with you is that we are in the process of finalizing the award. We've been notified of an award for Rural Energy for American program, or REAP technical assistance. So this is a $300,000 grant, will be good for 2 years. That's going to allow us to hire a technical assistant. And the goal really here is to support 25 new producers to help them apply for REAP funding programs on energy efficiency projects. What we'll be able to do with this funding and with this specialist is help provide those producers who are going to be applying for funding through REAP, provide them funding for feasibility studies as well as energy audits. The other recent award that we received, and it wasn't so much an award, but an extension of a memorandum of understanding or agreement that we have with USDA and NRCS, is for the conservation technical assistance, in which we were able to increase our agreement by an additional $2.1 million. And this increased funding is really going to help us assist go towards assisting those conservation districts on technical assistance on all the various environmental stewardship practices and efforts that they're doing in their respective region. And then the third program update is not from the Inflation Reduction Act, but is through the ARPA funding, is our Resilient Food System Infrastructure grant. This is a $4.2 million award that we received from USDA. We submitted our state plan. We're just waiting to hear back from the USDA on our approval of our state plan. Again, this program is really going to be focused on providing grants as well as technical assistance on building capacities in that middle of the food supply chain. So examples of eligibility that we're going to be focusing on here are projects to help modernize manufacturing, trainings that improve overall operations, expanding existing facilities, as well as purchasing equipment. So the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure, and you'll be hearing more and more about this as it comes online, is really kind of a sister program to the Regional Food Business Center that CSU is leading, in which Colorado, among other states, are really working to put a regional food business hub center in the West on local supply chain. So we're bringing to the table through the RFSI grant a lot of the grant money to build out some of that infrastructure here in Colorado. So those are updates on federal funding awards that we've recently received. So we have seen a flurry of activity just within the last couple of weeks. I think presumably they wanted to get some of that done before that pending government shutdown that we were able to avoid. On the strategic plan, we did incorporate your comments, Ag Commissioners, that we got, your feedback that we got at the last meeting. So thank you very much. We've also collected feedback from our Employee Action Committee here in the department, as well as Joe and George, our Regional Assistant Commissioners. A couple of changes that we've are calibrating or making based on that feedback. In our pathway regarding next generation, we will want to begin to focus. We're going to look to see how can we focus on providing support to mentors, not just necessarily the apprentice piece of it or the next generation, but how do we support mentors in mentoring new generation of ag leaders, as well as begin focusing on work-based apprenticeships that align with a recent executive order that the governor put out, and where he wants all state agencies to begin to focus on developing, establishing at least 2 work-based apprenticeship programs within the department. In the water resiliency path that we're going down, we're going to focus on ag water quality and having a measure and a program regarding to that. That's based on your feedback, and then also addressing PFAS in ag, whether that's partnering up with CDPHE or other agencies to begin to look at the impact PFAS will have on ag. So those are a couple of new strategic action plans that we're still developing and fine tuning. And then regenerative agriculture pathway, we're going to be look to see how can we increase support for conservation districts. That conservation and technical assistance award of $2.1 million that I just mentioned is going to go a long way in helping us increase that support to conservation districts. So we're fine-tuning our strategic plan into what we're calling kind of a second draft. And then once we have that, we're going to send it out to the entire department and begin working on with the divisions and program managers to, again, to keep fine tuning this thing, to get it really dialed in with the right language. And so once we get that second draft completed, we'll provide you a link as well. Of course, your input and your thoughts are always still welcomed in providing the draft, in providing comments on the draft. Some hiring updates that we're seeing a lot of action in our HR department, but our markets position and our water policy advisor position closed last night. We got a good amount of applications, so we'll be beginning the interview process there. We are going to be posting fairly soon our positions to replace Chris Whitney as the brands director. As we know, Chris has announced that he is going to be retiring at the end of this calendar year, so we want to start that process as soon as we can. We're currently in the process of interviewing a chief administrative officer. This is the role of Jennifer Kerr. So we're in the interviewing process there, as well as a federal land use policy position in the conservation division. We have hired, and we're very excited for our recent hires here, but we rehired a new executive assistant. As you remember, Melissa Guthrie has been promoted into a project coordinator for the commissioner's office. So we have hired Ariana Antonio, who comes from the Colorado Department of Education, has extensive experience as an executive assistant. We're really excited for what she's going to be able to bring and support Kate, as well as the rest of the the commissioner's office and the Ag Commission yourself. So you'll begin to see a new face here on these meetings. And then also we've hired a talent acquisition specialist, Elisa Pineda. She has tons of experience in hiring and recruiting in the private sector. And so we look forward to having her join. She'll be joining next Monday. And Ariana, the new executive assistant, will be starting on November 1st. We also hired a new business technical and innovation specialist, Philip Hughes. He comes from providing kind of customer support and meeting customer needs from Hewlett Packard. He's already started. He's on week 2. This is really going to be a very beneficial position here internally, because we have so many IT projects that we're working on within the department, but also stuff that's being driven down statewide on our department. So Philip Hughes is really going to be able to provide that technical expertise on those OIT projects that we've desperately needed. And then pretty soon we'll be turning to our climate marketing specialist positions, both in the markets division and the conservations division. Currently, we've contracted out with someone to do and conduct a marketing analysis of what climate smart marketing would do. What is the interest both in businesses as well as consumers on climate smart marketing? So Kate's comments here a minute ago are really on point with kind of where we're going and what we're trying to do with those 2 new positions, in which we're hoping that report will be done in November, and we'll be calibrating our position announcements and then our hiring based on that report. So we should start to see some movements on our climate marketing specialists here in this fall. A little bit about rulemaking. So we have 2 rules coming up next week on Wednesday, October 18th. Well, technically 3. The first 2 are regarding the pesticides program, where we have 2 rules within the pesticide program. One is going to be addressing kind of the neonic regulation of neonic pesticides as a result of legislation from the last legislative session, as well as notification requirements and expansion of that program for those that are on the pesticide sensitivity list. And the other rule that we'll be working on is for our community food access program. And here, if you remember, commissioners, we implemented an emergency rule for community food access in order for us to begin the grant process. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But that's emergency rules are temporary. So really, this rule is going to be used to codify the emergency rule into a longer permanent rule. We brought this to you as an update at the last Ag Commission meeting. So we're going to have the rulemaking hearing again on Wednesday, October 18th. Both the community food access rule and the 2 pesticide rules, once we go through the rulemaking hearing on Wednesday at your next meeting, we'll come back to you for a recommendation for the Ag Commissioner to adopt those rules. We're then going to be turning from in the rulemaking front. We're going to then begin turn our focus onto still staying with the Community Food Access Program, but we'll be working on a rule that will focus on the tax credit component of the Community Food Access Program. So right now, the rules we were talking about, what we're working on right now is a grant program. And then on top of that, the legislature passed a tax credit that kind of gets layered on top of that with 85% or up to 85% in the first year or 75% thereafter until 2030, in which producers and small food retailers can receive a tax credit for any equipment that they purchase or any other kind of operational needs that they may qualify essentially to help push healthy food into those low income, low access areas. So we'll be focusing on that tax credit rule here in the coming months. We've actually begun, and you'll be seeing kind of an update on that here in the fall, and then we'll go through rulemaking hearing in late December, early January, and then back to you for finalization of that rule in early 2024. So that's a little bit about what is on the horizon for our rulemaking. So for grant updates, still sticking with community food access, we have opened our first round of grant opportunities for, again, small family farms and food retailers. The first round is open and closes on November 7th. Again, these are grants that they can receive an applicant receive up to $50,000 to purchase equipment, operating expenses, help becoming more WIC and SNAP authorized, upgrading their point of sale system. There's a whole host and list of eligible purchases and services that they could qualify for, again, up to $50,000. We'll provide you a link. Hopefully you've seen some of the announcements that have come out in press releases, but in the follow-up email, we'll provide a link on our website. So you want to learn more about the Community Food Access Program and this grant program, particularly if you're familiar with any small family farms or food retailers in your area that would be interested in applying, certainly by all means, you can forward them that information, or you can get them in touch with the program manager, Mickey Davis, who you all met last week. Other grant updates: CDA has awarded $800,000 for fiscal year 23 specialty crop block grants for 12 projects. They're going to begin this month. In addition, we've also funded 6 projects for our Ag Leadership Program. We also have announced recently and currently open a grant to advance agrivoltaics. We announced up to a grants totaling up to a total of $500,000 in grants to do agrivoltaic studies. This would allow a recipient to get funding to study the benefits of agrivoltaics, explore the trade-offs of agrivoltaics, can help with construction or expansion of existing systems, or even conducting research in the world of agrivoltaics. And that grant program is open until October 27th. And then finally, for grant updates, there is a meat, poultry processing and expansion program. This is a USDA grant in which meat processors would be who are looking to convert to becoming USDA certified. They could apply directly to the USDA. However, we have funding that we received from legislature 2 years ago that can help those processors with the grant writing process. So producers can receive up to $5,000 reimbursed for hiring somebody with the skill set to help them write their grant proposal for their application to the USDA. This application closes in late November. We have a couple people helping with grant writing. So far, we've had 4 processors apply for an earlier round of funding that occurred this summer, and we expect another 4 to 6 custom or meat processors this year, 4 to 6 applied this round. So we should see a total of anywhere from 8 to 10 processors expanding their operations here in Colorado through this USDA grant program. Once said and done, if we have 4 to 6 apply for this round, we should have a little bit of extra funding available that we received from the legislature, about $25,000 that we'll then be able to help apply to other non-meat processors, to other individuals that we like to apply to for federal funding for a federal program that may need assistance in grant writing. Grant writing is certainly a premium right now. Very hard to find people to be able to help with that. So we have funding available for others, that if there's other programs, not necessarily for meat and poultry processing, but other FDA or other federal programs, we would have funding to be able to expand to assist those individuals apply for those grants. Finally, just a couple of upcoming events to put on your calendar if you're in the neighborhood or you're interested. We are going to be launching our working group meetings for the Wild Horse Project. This is a new program that came about from legislature last year to address wild horses, and partnering with BLM in addressing some of those issues. They'll be holding their first working group meeting October 19th and October 20th in Glenwood Springs. It'd be the afternoon on October 19th and the morning of October 20th. And then they'll be holding their second meeting here in Broomfield the morning of November 13th, and then into the afternoon of November 13th and the morning of November 14th. So that allows people to travel, attend the meeting, stay the night, finish up the meeting in the morning, and then head back. So we're excited to see that program launch with that working group. Also, we have Colorado Uncorked, which is a really, really fun event. That is on Friday, November 3rd at History Colorado. We're offering a handful of tickets on a first-come, first-served basis. And Melissa could send details in the recap email regarding that event. And it really is a great event in which there's wine tasting paired with Colorado culinary experts. And it's really to celebrate Colorado wine and the accomplishments we do there and support our wine industry. So Colorado Uncorked is just a great event. And then finally, upcoming, and registration is now open, but we do have the Regional Food Summit. Registration is open. This is an event. This event will take place in December 7th and 8th at the Spur campus. This event, this is, I think, the second annual one. The first one was last year, and it was a tremendous, very valuable event. This is a partnership between not just the Department of Agriculture, but CSU and COPSAC, the Colorado Food Systems Advisory Council. On December 7th, there's a Colorado Proud Happy Hour, in which there's a great networking event. But in general, the summit really is an opportunity to connect people from anywhere from producers all the way to advocacy of food access and food pantries and food hubs, and just the whole food supply chain. Really, you're able to connect and engage on a wide variety of food system issues. So ranging from the Farm Bill implementation to infrastructure, addressing local and regional challenges, some really great topics. So we'll be sending a link to the Food Summit website, so you can check out the agenda. And if you want to register, by all means, we encourage you to. It's a really great event, and it's really well attended. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the upcoming, all the updates that I provided.
Well, I have a few questions and comments. So the first one, do you have a timeline for when the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant will be developed and released?
We don't. We're still waiting on the USDA. I think they probably had a slight hiccup with the whole government shutdown thing, but we imagine it to be soon, like any day now. So I would imagine we're talking, fairly soon. I don't want to say weeks or months, but it could happen fairly quickly.
Okay. And I still just want to reiterate, I've talked to many people about the community food access thing, and the $350,000 $100,000 of income is really a point that people are bringing up a lot. The margins are low in agriculture, and so that's really not it's not working for a lot of the people that I've heard. So if there's any way, if you go forward with that program to get those numbers revised, I think you would get more applicants and probably more productive action out of the system, out of the grant program.
Thanks, Catherine.
Then,
Quick comment.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we're aware that because we went, talking with Jordan, so that would require a legislative change. That was what the legislature put into statute. We believe they got that definition from industry, and so we're going to work and see if there is a natural fit. We're monitoring bills to see if we can't change that legislatively this year. We are seeing lots of interest in the grant program. So we have $5.5 million for the grant, which we think we should be able to, we have lots of interest to be able to get that money out the door. Where I see that we would maybe want to focus on the long-term adjustment is on the tax credit component, because they tied the tax credit program also to that. Mm-hmm. And so the tax credit program, again, goes to all the way through 2030. And that's $10 million a year. So that's something like $70 million. This is where I think where if we can get that changed legislatively, we'll look for opportunity this year, but then try and address it next year, particularly on the tax credit program.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. And the other comment, let me see, where was I? Oh, just about the meat processing expansion grants. So I think there's probably more people than that applying that you haven't heard about. So I'm working on 3 in-state grants, but I've talked to at least 3 other people that I think hired other grant writers. And I know John knows of a few more. So, and the other question I had is the technical assistance money available. A lot of the people reaching out to me do not have a fully developed business plan. Would that cover help with developing their business plan, or is it just for the actual grant writing?
That's a great question. I believe it's just for the grant writing, but I can go back into, it's been a couple of years since that bill passed. I think we can go back and take a look. John would be a great resource on that as well.
Okay. All right. I'll ask him, because it's, I find that we're spending more time developing the business plan than we are with the narrative of the grant and putting that together. So the major expense is going to be that business plan, not the actual grant.
Yeah, that's a great comment, and I'll follow up with John, and maybe we can connect offline on that. I appreciate that, and that's good to know. Our numbers, 4 to 6 that we're working on with the reimbursement side, but good to know that there are some others that are working that may not need that reimbursement for grants. So the more we can have and help drive and expand our meat processing capacity, even if it's not with CDA assistance, is wonderful news.
And there's some good projects. I've read some great proposals. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some money.
Nice.
Somewhere.
Yes, I had a question. It's a beginner ag commissioner question. Because I know a lot of people that would be interested in a lot of these grants, and especially the assistance for the grants, where can I feel like it's best if I just send them a link. So I was just wondering, do I just find that on the CDA website? Is there a specific place to look for so that I can make sure I send them in the right direction?
That's a great question, Elena. Thank you. We will make sure we send you a list, a link of all the grants that I mentioned and other ones as well in the follow-up email. And I'm going to make a note that it may be good for us to design maybe within our website kind of a housing area that could direct people to open grant opportunities.
And I think John tried to do that at one point, and I'm not sure if he's been able to keep it updated.
Yeah.
Another good way is on the homepage. If you scroll down, we have all of our press releases, and those have, you can click those hyperlinks, and those will take you to the grant pages with all the information as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I agree. I think it's nice to have things as digestible as possible. So thank you.
I should also mention, Elena, on that point, our comms team does make CDA at a glance, like monthly cards that have our open grants, rulemakings, events, and we put those on social and we put those in our monthly newsletter as well. So while they might not be as timely because they're once a month, it's another great resource, and you can just kind of copy and paste that image and send that around too.
Thank you so much. Because like I said, I can think of several people that would be really interested in these programs. And I know the USDA assistant thing would be huge because a lot of producers really do want to go USDA, but it's so like they want to have, everything so that they can be a little bit more accessible. And it can be so hard. And that's what I hear so many times from my butchers is just like, it's so hard to be USDA certified, and it's really hard to get into the program as well, especially just understanding the rules, and then the expenses can be so high. So I think that's really great, and thank you for that.
When we met last in Grand Junction, the conversation came up about the mentorship and the mentorship program and those things, Hollis, that you mentioned. And I got to wondering, Simplicity, if there should be some training for the mentors, so that we know that they're guiding the mentees in the proper direction. There's so much to think about when you're transitioning insurance and all those kind of things. I'm just putting that on the burner for something to think about.
I appreciate that, and I'll maybe talk a little bit more for longer so George can get off mute, and I'll throw it to George. But I think this is really George's was George's idea and thought is really what we need to focus on, the mentor side of this relationship and support, and what does that support need. So I appreciate that comment, because training, I think, would be right on top of kind of what do the mentors need. But George, what are your thoughts?
Well, you sort of summed some of it up there, Hollis. The thing that we've learned in 15 years of having an apprentice program is that, and bringing new mentors in, is that they have this idea that they're going to have this bright young person just follow them around, and they're just going to show them what they do every day, and somehow that's all going to work out. And it's really needs to be much more than that, because this person is coming to you to get an education. And so you need to really focus on how you're going to deliver that education and commit to that person's education. You're not just getting cheap help. You're getting a person who's really interested in taking this on themselves, or it's like becoming an electrician or a plumber. You have to spend so many hours under a master in order to learn these things. And what we've learned is that a lot of people in agriculture, first of all, they don't really know what mentoring is. They think it's just being a boss. And so trying to get them to get that in their minds when they start this process and know what to expect. There's insurance, there's minimum wage, there's housing, there's all of the different things that comes with any other employee, workman's comp, all of those kind of things that have to be thought about. And so, in the whole program of matching apprentices with mentors, trying to get that match made for people who are going to work well together, and then help both sides, both parties. And Quivira has staff who go around and basically monitor a certain number of mentors and apprentices who are matched through that program, and make sure that everything is going the way that both parties want it to, because it doesn't always. And when conflict arises, then having a way to help get through that without a lawsuit or some sort of other negative thing, because it's a serious thing after a while. And the more of these you have, the more organized this program is going to have to be.
I agree. I see it as like a course called "So You Want to Be a Mentor?" This is the course for you, and from the beginning to the end of what qualifies, because we don't want them to be misguided.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. What other questions do we might have for Hollis on operations?
Yes, I have one question, Hollis. Thank you. When do you expect to have the strategic plan finalized?
The goal for the strategic plan to be finalized in January, right before, in line with our SMART Act. For kind of new commissioners, the SMART Act is a report we go in front of the legislature to talk about kind of our efficiencies in our department as we are stewards of federal and state dollars. And so it's a pretty comprehensive overview of where we've been and where we're going. And so really ideally it'd be nice to align that strategic plan with the SMART Act in January. SMART Act presentation.
Thank you. And then my other question is more related to soil health, STAR, and the marketing of that. I'm wondering if there's ever been a dialogue on how, stewardship on a broad level could also apply to like labor, and if that's ever going to be part of the marketing conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that one, Roberto. We've been talking with certainly Farmers Union and others who have been exploring the fair food model that came out of Florida and the worker organizing that happened there, over the past decades. And essentially, I think the interest is there market share for producers in states that have rigorous labor laws, or, for producers who are going above and beyond. So that is definitely on the table in terms of a conversation. Right now CDA isn't leading that conversation. We're sort of following to see where the interest lies and where we could be supportive. But I do think it's a really interesting one as we're looking to sort of grow the label world and the certified fill in the blank world in order to gain market access, whether at home or abroad, because we're already in a place where there are so many labels, and there's the question of, at what point do you start sliding down the end of the bell curve and not getting much more return for your labeling, even though you're doing all this good work. So I think it's a great question. And certainly, with STAR, I see it as a hub with many spokes. So who knows if STAR will be that place where we kind of build a bridge into labor on the marketing side, but I think it's something we could certainly explore.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Roberto. And I think that building on that too is like the animal cruelty part. I know that's something that I just hear from a lot of customers. I mean, they're very interested in how the animal lived, did it have a good life? And I don't know if that's also part of that stewardship idea. And I know I'm with you, Kate, like we don't need to be like non-GMO, not this, it gets overwhelming. But I do know just from listening to customers that is a question that I get a lot, is like, what kind of life does your animal lead? And that's really seems to be really important on the consumer side.
Well, and I think that ties in with our animal welfare work that we're doing. Similar with labor, we're really trying to say, hey, Colorado is out in front on this, but we're going to do this work in a way that helps benefit agriculture. And that's why we're really trying to build our marketing muscle so that we can work to prove that hypothesis, essentially.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Great. Kate, did you want to jump in here?
Yes, thank you, Colleen. I would like to add something to the agenda, if it's okay with you. We are getting ready for our annual meeting in November, which will include election of officers. Per our bylaws, I am required to appoint a nominating committee that will put forward officer recommendations to the full board in November. So Colleen, if we can, I think it would make sense on the agenda just after we discuss the 2024 meeting schedule, if we can add a time for discussion on the nominating committee. I will ask for volunteers at that time. And if we don't get any, we'll figure it out from there. But it's just a 2-member nominating committee we'd work with you between now and November to put forward names to the full commission in November for chair and vice chair. So I'll leave that with you, Colleen.
That would be great. I penciled that in, so good.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I may, real quick, Colleen, just while I have the mic, this is a little outside of our business, but especially for the livestock folks on the board or on the call right now, I just wanted to note that we did have another passing recently in our CDA and ag community. One of our brand commissioners on the brand board, David Mendenhall, recently passed away, which has been a big shock. I just found out, and I know many of you have likely worked with him over the years. I apologize to be giving that news in a public forum, but I wanted to make sure you all had that news sooner than later. So we'll send out the obituary for David, but that's a huge loss. He's certainly been part of CDA team and the brand board team for quite some time. And I know our team and certainly his family and community are likely reeling incredibly from the loss of David. So Colleen, thanks for letting me jump in. I just want to make sure you all had that information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate, for sharing that. Yeah, condolences to their families. Next on the agenda is the discussion of CDA initiatives. Hollis or Kate, were you going to lead this, or what direction do we want this to go?
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Hollis, but this is still a placeholder. We've had this on the agenda for many meetings now as kind of just a chance for getting your feedback. You heard Hollis's, list of everything we're working on right now. We just want to keep gut checking from you all. We won't do this every time probably going forward, but since we've got the strategic plan, we're moving toward the legislative session. How are we doing? Anything we're missing that we should be focused on? Kind of the floor is yours.
Great. So the mic is open for anyone. Elena?
Yeah, I just want to say, just looking at water and our focus on water, as I just want to make sure that maybe some underrepresented groups like the Acequia groups and stuff like that are always included in the conversation to make sure that those kind of different ways of doing things, maybe more traditional, maybe more cultural, are respected and honored and included in anything we're doing to promote Colorado's ag. So.
I'll throw this out there. I'm going to discuss this a little bit more in my member update, but we are going to see a huge shift in our community with growing Coors brewing barley with a growers meeting. And I think it just needs to be on the forefront of what other kind of crops are good crops for Colorado. And it's changing along our area because Coors is making some changes. And I think the discussion is going to come up around here along the Front Range of what other kind of crops, and it won't be necessarily the discussion of water issues. It's going to be sustainability of the farming issues because the crops are changing here. And I'll discuss that more with my members update, but something just to put on the forefront of continuing to see what other kind of crops can be grown in the state.
Yeah, I guess for me, what comes up is how we get to identify actionable metrics and milestones for buffering climate change. What does that look like for the Department of Ag to really take a stand to see how we can move in that direction to meet, reduction of CO2 emissions or something like that, and what additional supports could be allocated throughout the entire supply chain, I guess. And I think I'm thinking about that because I was recently at the Regenerative Food Systems Investment Forum a couple of weeks ago. And this idea of like, how do we decarbonize the supply chain beyond the farm really made me think about other areas of the food system that also kind of need to be part of this conversation. And what does that look like? And I think, the one piece for me is like a lot of the tax incentives, but also innovative renewable energy pilots and things like that are really exciting to look at the research, the feasibility, and then how do we facilitate investments beyond just kind of policy related allocations of funds. And this has kind of got me thinking about something that California has, that's a public bank that guarantees investments into those sectors for the purposes of building food resilience or reducing emissions or decarbonizing supply chains. And I know there's a coalition starting to advance a similar project, a state bank here in Colorado that can facilitate even more funding. So I just wanted to see what can be done in that respect, and really putting agriculture as like at the forefront of some of these conversations and initiatives.
Thanks, Roberto. I think you articulated well, kind of in my mind, the Venn diagram we're seeing between our conservation division and our markets division, and the overlap, particularly when we talk about climate marketing specialists, the work they're doing there, the work we're doing in soil health. So I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of stuff on point that we'll be able to talk about here, particularly when legislative session starts beginning to ramp up.
And a quick follow-up to that, Hollis, when we're looking at climate smart marketing, so to speak, or marketing of that encompasses kind of a broad range of audiences, right? So it's not just like consumers, but it also potentially means, investment funds, for example. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think so. As far as investments, investments to producers for climate smart, or investments?
Yeah, well, I guess just the marketing of it isn't just for consumers, but it's for even VC funds or other stakeholders, so to speak, that have resources. Or is it only for consumers, I guess?
No, if anything, it's almost more like a B2B. So
I see.
Like we're trying to see what the analyst will say, because the analyst that we hired is looking at both, right? They're looking, what is climate smart marketing? What is the impact of that concept to the consumer, but also to the business,
to other businesses?
Yeah. We're still very much figuring kind of out how these two positions will work. But the idea somewhat is that we help build, one of the things we do is help build connections to food manufacturers, distributors, to producers that are practicing climate smart, production. How do we make a connection? So, producer connects with manufacturer, and they build. So that's kind of almost kind of how we're trying to figure out. And the analysis will look at
makes sense.
Consumer, but also business, right?
That makes sense.
Work with producers, yeah.
And that's not just on commodities, right? That's also like specialty crops or,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But thanks for the comments on investment.
Anyone else for any discussion of these initiatives or anything that needs to be brought to the forefront? All right.
Sorry,
David, please. Yes.
Sorry, I'm in actually a corn truck right now. I couldn't find my mute button. Sorry about that, because I'm supposed to be driving.
You are good.
I just wanted to bring up too, a lot of times what I'm noticing out in the field, well, shouldn't say it that way, out in the public, I guess, we're starting to see a few of these green energies, come around, have discussions with the public and the residents and things like that. I'm actually kind of amazed, and I don't know if that's the right word, but some of the questions that are being asked towards some of these companies, it's almost like how little they do know about agriculture, and yet that's where they're wanting to come out and start some of these renewable energies. So I know this is probably a whole different subject, but I want to maybe see if some of these emphasis can be put towards maybe, again, it's kind of an education, but if we're going to go forward with some of them, I think they might need to be educated a little better on how rural ag works as well, before they just come in and jump all over everything, trying to set up their programs. But just a comment I have and I've seen from some of the public and witnessed myself in some of these meetings. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I've heard others make this comment as well, so I appreciate that.
Anyone else with thoughts or ideas? All right. Well, I think we are at the point now where we can take a short 10-minute break. We are 2 minutes ahead of schedule, so yay. So let's resume back at 1:48. Does that work for everyone? All right, we'll see you then. On the agenda for
Yes.
upcoming outreach.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, the recording in progress message came on right when you were talking. Throws me off. All right, well, I'll be careful about what I say now that we're going to be recording. But I actually don't have a huge amount. Hollis did get some of the events out of the way that I was going to kind of run through, but that's great. So I will just say that if you are attending events again, or, just please let me know. It was really great to know that, like, Roberto was going to the one that just happened, because I think we had a couple of staff who were there too. And that way we can follow up as well. And then one of the things that I don't know if I've mentioned here, but Olga and I are trying to get some of those benchmarks and measurable outcomes figured out for what it looks like with outreach events in particular, but also communications, and just get a handle on the number that's going out, how many people, how many events we're attending, just so we can have some starting points, as well as we're looking at the strategic plan. Having that data helps us to identify gaps in, like, hey, do we not have people attending this? Do we have them attending this? Do we need to have somebody attending this? Do we need to have 5 people attending this? So that kind of thing. If you'll just let me know again where you're going, we're kind of trying to keep somewhat of tabs on that, just for planning purposes more than anything else. But also very interested in any write-ups that you guys want to do about lessons learned. I mean, it's great to have report outs here. One thing that George and Joe have been doing for us is just sending kind of just a short email to Kate and Hollis and Jordan and myself, just kind of talking through different meetings that they've been going to and some of the takeaways, community sentiments that have been discussed. And that's really helpful, just especially for knowing in particular regions, what's happening, how are people feeling about it, and maybe thinking about follow-up in those areas. So if you are bored in a tractor, or in your, you're binge watching your show for the 80th time on Netflix, and maybe you remembered that you went to an event, and just do a quick email out to a few of us and just let us know, how you're feeling, what you're thinking. Because that brings me to my second point. We're still trying to get a handle on what it is that makes you guys tick, and what you really feel like is super important. And I feel like I'm starting to get an inkling based on some of the conversational points that are brought up here. But just want to reiterate that from the last meeting, I had asked if you guys wouldn't mind just shooting me a quick email, just talking about some of the things that you're particularly interested in, so we can do some follow-up either with op-eds or particular events that we can connect you to, or even programs that maybe you should be talking with more specifically. You know, I think it's safe to say that Roberto is already talking with the community foods program staff and like keeping up with what they're doing. But like Jeff, shout out to him, sent me an email yesterday, kind of talking through some of the things that he finds in particular to be really interesting. And we do want to hear that from you guys. Multiple times, because I don't know if you guys are like me, but if I hear something once, it goes in one ear and out the other. If I hear it and I see it in an email and then I hear it again, I'm more likely to remember like, oh my gosh, this person's really passionate about this. Let's get them talking about it. So just want to throw that out there. Again, not something to spend a huge amount of time on. Just send me a few bullet points about things that you would like to either, you know, write about, have us help you write about, to get out in your community to talk about. We can be creative. Just want to know what it is that you find to be really interesting. And then that being said, the other follow-up from last month's meeting is that I have a rough draft of a talking points document started with some of the updated developmental goals, some of the talking points and programs, grants associated with those. That's currently gone to Olga for review, and we'll have Jordan look at it for legislative stuff, and then we'll just kind of pass it around our executive team just to make sure that we have some of those top points talked about. I know that Kate had mentioned at the last meeting too, some of the stuff around the PFAS. So just want to kind of talk through, you know, just have a rough start so that you guys have something to talk through. And think of it more as like a manual than like you have to stick to these talking points. Like, oh, I should say this, this, and this every time somebody asks me about the STAR program. Like, that's not what this is necessarily. But if you have questions, I definitely want to have this ready to send out to you guys for discussion so that you can come back with like, this would be really helpful if you included this, or this will be really great and we can jump off on it. So with that, also next month, hopefully, or sorry, in December, we're hoping to get some type of media training set up with you guys and Olga. So we can use this document as our starting off point, and talking through that and then working with you guys on more training. And just really quickly to finish up some of the other events that are happening. There's a lot going on in November in particular. So I'm going to try to have an outreach email sent out the last week or even before that of October, just because some of these are really great meetings and there's a whole lot happening in November back to back. Like there's the C9 Basin Roundtable that's happening in Westminster. That's with the CWCB, where they're talking through kind of the Colorado Water Plan and what that looks like with all of the roundtables. The last time they had one of those was in 2019, I believe, so right before the pandemic. So it's kind of timely discussion for water issues if you're really interested. Then there's a Women in Ag conference in Greeley. There's the South Platte Basin Forum. That one's hard to say. That's also in November at about the same time as the Colorado Ag Water Alliance Summit is happening. So if you don't get to something in November, it's not because there's not something out there. It's just because you're exhausted from looking at the possibilities and have passed out, which is kind of where I am right now. So anyway, we do have a lot of stuff again happening in December and January as well. So want to make sure that you guys are prepped and feel good, and have a somewhat of a grasp of all of the new programs that Hollis has been talking about for a long time. So definitely want to make you guys feel prepared and feel confident in talking about them. So that's about all I had on my list of things to talk to you guys about. Any questions? Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bethany.
I always have questions, but just on I was just wondering, Bethany, thank you so much for that. Appreciate the information. Where can I find this all in one place so that I can follow up on anything I'm interested in going to?
Sure. So I've been trying to send out a monthly email, and I have you guys on that, but it is through Constant Contact, which is a bear about like putting stuff into spam folders. So if you don't see something around the 4th or 5th of the month, then you're wondering, like, you might check your spam folders, and that's just a nice PSA for like pretty much anything that we're sending out. We do a lot through Constant Contact. So just check your spam folders periodically, and you may be getting newsletters and things put into that accidentally. But also I will throw a link in the chat of kind of my really rough scheduler that I use, that I try to update as people let me know things that are happening and the dates that they're happening. So that is also linked in the email. but it's not an external document. It's just an internal one that I use. So you won't find it on the website.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Sure, no worries.
I'm visual. I got to see it, so thank you so much.
No worries.
All right. Thanks, Bethany. Be looking for those emails. And it's weird. Sometimes Olga's go to my regular mail. Sometimes it opts into my spam. There's no consistency, so it's odd. So yeah, do check your spam. Melissa, the 2024 meeting schedule.
So included in your packet on the last page is our proposed meeting schedule for 2024. This correlates really closely with our rulemaking schedule since the Ag Commission approves our rules. So if possible, we'd just like everyone to take a look at the dates and make sure that everything looks okay. I know it's really far out, so for most of you, you probably won't know, but we like to at least get a rough idea. This schedule is really similar to the one that we had for 2023, meaning that half of our meetings will be in person, and then the other half we will do virtually. So we're going to flip-flop every other month between those meetings. January and November are in-person meetings, but we've elected to do those in Broomfield. And then the other 4 meetings we have, March, May, July, and September, we hope to do on location with Ag Commissioners hosting us. And we'll discuss that a little bit more at our meeting in November. We hope to get volunteers, for those of you who haven't hosted us yet, to host us in different parts of the state for those 4 meetings. So if you are interested, start thinking now about what date looks really good, and maybe snag that for yourself at our next meeting, or we'll discuss it a little bit more. But if there are no major objections to the schedule, then we will at least go ahead and finalize these dates. But let me know, anyone now, floor is open if you see any issues.
I have a question about the on location meetings. Can we offer to host one that's not actually in our hometown? I want to take you out to the northwest part of the state.
I don't see why not.
Okay,
I think it sounds fantastic. Yeah.
I'll think about that.
Any other thoughts?
Melissa, I didn't look real close yet, but are most of those all going to be on Tuesdays or Wednesdays like we've done in the past?
They are all on Wednesdays, yes. And the same time frames, 9 to 3 p.m. for our long meetings, and then 12:30 to 3 for the shorter virtual calls.
Okay, and I forgot why we moved this one to Tuesday today. Sorry about that.
It was because of me, David. This is Colleen. I'm going to be gone tomorrow. So I requested this a couple months ago because I knew I was going to be out of town. So my fault.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
And we know that things will come up where we probably have to move a couple of these dates, but we try to at least get them roughly penciled in. You all have busy schedules. We have crazy schedules. So we try to get them done, for the year, and fingers crossed they work out. But if you ever have something that comes up and you feel like it would be good to move the meeting a day or two, you're welcome to always ask us, and we can pitch it to the commission and see if it works for everybody else, like Colleen did. All right, I think we're good if no one else has comments. Also, in your recap email, I will be sending a copy of our bylaws. That is something that will also be reviewed at our November meeting. Our next meeting is November 8th in person in the Broomfield office. We will do the annual training there and then a review and revision of the bylaws. So I will send that out, and you guys can start looking at that and seeing if there's anything that you would like to revise.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Colleen.
We have penciled in, we're going to add an agenda item regarding serving on the nominating committee. So Kate, I'll let you take that, and I'll throw it at you where I would be happy to serve on that committee if it's possible for the outgoing chairperson to do that. And that's a question for Billy.
Well, I think getting a strong head nod yes from Billy, and you are also welcome to be nominated because our bylaws do say that officers shall serve a term of 1 year and may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive years. So Just know that you might receive a nomination still.
Oh, okay.
But I will take that as me achieving 50% of my goal for this agenda item. So just as a reminder, per our bylaws, I mentioned this earlier, but we have 3 officer positions, 2 of which you all serve in. So chair and vice chair. The third is secretary, and that's me or my designee. So that's Melissa. Officers are elected yearly at our November annual meeting. So that's our in-person meeting next month in Broomfield. So we'll go through our long list of annual meeting items. This is one of them. Per the bylaws, it's my responsibility to appoint the nominating committee. And then we'll work with both of you, making sure we're respecting sunshine laws, to come up with a proposal to that November board meeting on those 2, the chair and vice chair positions. So I will take your volunteer position, Colleen, to serve on that nominating committee. I should say too that serving on the nominating committee does not prevent you from becoming an officer. The commission could still choose, and I think we have actually done this before, maybe with Simon, where you were on the committee, but then nominated to serve in an officer role. So just know that if you do decide to volunteer on this committee, you could still be voted in to serve in an officer role. So with that, I have Colleen as one of our 2 members. Would anybody else like to volunteer on the nominating committee?
I'm happy to volunteer. The only concern was, since I'm new, I just wanted to make sure that I would, if somebody else wants that more than me, they should do it, because they would have a little bit more sense of the dynamics and maybe be a better choice as far as choosing people. And also I am very biased because I think, Colleen, you do an excellent job. So
Thank you.
Well, Elena will certainly help you through sort of the background of how this works, you know, the history of officer positions, and anything else you would need to know in serving on that committee. It's pretty light lift. There's not too much work that we need to do between now and November. So I would accept your self-nomination to serve on that committee. If that works for you. So Colleen and Elena. And then we'll follow up offline and come up with next steps, and then know that we'll be on our agenda in November.
But I would add that if anyone else is interested, I happily see, just because I know that there's a lot of people that have been on the board a lot longer and have a lot more knowledge.
Okay. We'll be in touch, Kate.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Pardon me, George?
Yeah. This is George. I have something real quick. I was looking at the 8th, 9th, and 10th of November. I know both Nick Trainer and I are going to be at a meeting in Colorado Springs, I believe, on the 8th. So that, I don't know, I see Nick's online there.
Yeah, that does cross over, George. I don't know if that'll prevent you from having a quorum or not, Melissa.
They don't need me for a quorum, so.
I don't know at this time, Nick. It kind of depends on everyone else's schedules and if we can have folks appear. It might be a bit short notice to move that date. What were you going to say, Roberto? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I may be able to join. I'm not sure. I'm going to be at a conference out of town that day as well.
So I think what I'll do, if it's okay with everyone, is in my recap email, I'll just put in a little reminder about attendance to the November 8th meeting and seek confirmation from everyone who's here and the members who are not, if you're able to attend the November 8th meeting, just to ensure we have a quorum. If we don't, then we can look at moving that meeting. Does that sound good? Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, George.
That sounds good, Melissa. Thank you. So everybody needs to look for that and acknowledge that email that Melissa sends you on your availability. Great, thanks. George, it is now Regional Assistant Commissioner update time.
Well, thank you, Colleen. Yeah, it's You know, these Ag Commission meetings kind of what passes for a social gathering for me. I really like hear how you guys are all doing and see what's going on around the state. And I haven't got a whole lot. About a week ago, I attended a meeting in Conejos County regarding the potential designation of a natural national cultural area, I believe it's called. Yeah, I believe it's a national, which would be a federal designation of the lower Rio Grande River and the community down there. So I attended that meeting to listen to what people were thinking about it. It was pretty well attended. There were probably 45 people there. And what they're primarily interested in or worried about is their grazing rights along the river. And there's also a lot of feral horses down there. There's a lot of trespass cattle on BLM lands down there. There's a lot of stuff going on down there and has been for a long time. And so it's a very kind of a touchy issue in some ways. But what the crux of it was that back in 1992, I was part of a delegation that went to Washington and got that area designated as an outstanding natural area. And the reason we did that was through the Rio Grande Water Conservation District, was to make sure that there wasn't going to be a wild and scenic designation on the Rio Grande River in the lower reach of the Rio Grande, right where it goes into New Mexico. And the reason for that is if you have a federal water right and Congress decides they want to change or enhance those water rights, it could very much affect agriculture upstream. And so all of the agriculture along both sides of the river down there, all the way up to the head of the river, the sub-districts, everything that has to do with water above that federal water right could be complicated by having a federal water right below that. So the area was designated an outstanding natural area to protect it as an area of environmental concern by the BLM, but unfortunately it didn't carry with it any funding. So the BLM hasn't been able to really fund any sort of improvements or grazing help or water development or anything like that. So one of the good things about this other designation is that as long as it's written and it honors those original water right language, it could potentially help people down there with getting some help through the BLM to do some fencing, do some management of livestock. And so that was sort of the crux of the meeting. There wasn't anybody who was adamantly opposed to that, but you know, people were very interested in that potential designation. As we always should be, that you're going to have the federal government do something as your neighbor, you want to know about it. And so that's a good part of what that was. I believe next week, Bethany and I may be going over to Gunnison to visit with the Ute tribe over there. They've invited us to a branding and show us the ranch over there around Gunnison. So I'm hoping to make that trip and ride over with Bethany and kind of work on the connection between the Ag Department and the Ute tribe there. So that's kind of it for me, I believe.
Thank you, George. You're doing a great job attending all these meetings and getting input. So we appreciate all of that going on. Are there any questions for George? All right. Thank you so much. We're going to do commission member updates. And I'm just going to play the Brady Bunch that I see on my screen. And Catherine, you're right next to me. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Well, it's fall here. It's still pretty warm. We haven't had any frost or freezes yet in the Grand Valley. Also, no precipitation. It's been going over us and up into the mountains. So still dry. I guess we're in moderate drought now, but that's not surprising this time of the year for over here. People are gathering their cattle out of the mountains. I think the sheep are mostly down now. Cattle trucks are all over the place, so people need to be cautious, especially on the narrow mountain roads. And crops are getting in. The peach season just ended since Harrison or Brant, unfortunately, is no longer with us. I'll give you the crop report for the peaches too. The Palisade Market ended 2 weeks ago, and it was very well attended this year. The Fruita Farmers Market is still ongoing. There's still apples and pears available. In fact, a pretty nice apple crop this year in the valley. People are bringing corn in a little bit. I've seen some trucks going around. A lot of silage cutting has been going on nonstop for about 3 weeks now too. I guess that's about it.
All right, thank you. Roberto?
Thanks, Colleen. Let's see where to begin. Yeah, fall's happening, which also signals the winding down of farmers markets for us. We still have one of them that will go pretty far into November, but for the majority, that's winding down for us, and it's welcome. It was definitely a busy season. One of the highlights, I think, for me was hosting the Alliance for Collective Action. Last weekend, we did a farm tour. Well, actually, it was a whole food systems tour. I got to see Cindy Lair there and Sam Anderson. They came to the farm first, and we had different stations set up to really anchor the vision and the programs that we're supporting. And so we had a GIS tent with one of our staff who has a background in GIS and land surveying. We had a soil health and mycelium, and we had a mycologist there. How to grow mushrooms and microgreens, and then kind of the early stages of the food hub when we incubated at the farm. And that was really great to have people ask questions and really engage both at the ecological kind of soil level, but then also on the social level, and then looking at some of the initiatives in the state for supporting regenerative agriculture, first generation new and beginning farmers, and then a lot of the food access work. And then we went to the food hub to have lunch that was catered by a really great chef, local chef, using all local ingredients, and to talk about distribution and infrastructure and how important it is to have trucks and coolers and cold and dry storage so that this whole food system could actually develop and function. And then we spoke a lot about regenerating the supply chain and the role that institutions play in that as well, which kind of came into focus in terms of scale and impact, these two things that we're always trying to balance. And of course, we want the most impact for our dollars, but I think that's also taking into account the impact that small scale producers have. And how do we begin to look at supporting urban farms and smallholder farms that are equally embracing this kind of regenerative future, so to speak. So that was a really great, it was kind of the first time that I was able to really bring a whole tour to see the entire food system that we're creating. And then we ended the day at Jack's Solar Garden and looked at the agrivoltaic farm over there and had a great panel and great conversations. And before that was also, I mentioned the Regenerative Food Systems Investment Forum. And that was kind of my first kind of foray into the finance world and all the funding and capital that folks want to put to good use. And a lot of it is really focused on land and kind of carbon sequestration practices at large scale ag. And then we're also looking at the role that CPGs play in that and how we're really trying to market. Hollis, going back to your discussion around climate smart marketing for farmers to grow food that or products that are going to large scale CPG companies that are equally invested in supporting regenerative farms and supply chains, and really looking at what does that marketing look like. And I remember one of the panelists talking about things that we love that we spend money on, and things that we just have to spend money on because, you know, it's the logistics of daily life, and how we frame regeneration as something we love rather than something that's trying to buffer crises, right? Like, this is not just something that we need to do, but it's something that we generally love because it's better, higher quality products and can stimulate a lot of economic growth, and it's regenerative, right? It's beyond sustainable. It can actually have a longer lasting impact on food producers, suppliers, distributors, et cetera. So that was like a really good holistic look at the interest that folks have in supporting and investing in regenerative agriculture, but also looking at some of the challenges, and also, you know, the ways that we're looking at ROI. Usually within the finance world, ROI is an economic return, but now we're also looking at the value added benefits that are not necessarily monetary, but more in line with resilience and health, and, you know, kind of a social impact on that level. Also happy to announce we're starting a new partnership with Compost Colorado. They are going to be utilizing 2 acres of our farmland to continue processing their compost in exchange for giving us compost. So it's a really interesting kind of closed loop. I think that was the last section of our circular economy that we're really hoping to activate, and any food scraps or waste that's generated from our partners or from the food hub can now go back to the farm to get processed and then distributed among various plots in our farm network. So really excited to see that happening and hopefully to grow. And then another partnership with the Align Center is the Star Plus program that they've been contracted to oversee. And I think that's really important for me to look at how Star Plus, or Star in general, can really help support some of the smaller farmers. And again, it kind of goes back to how do we balance impact versus scale, and who are we leaving out, and how do we build in measures to be more inclusive in those areas. And then I'm really looking forward to next week's tour with Kate. I'm probably gonna butcher this, but the GFRAS.
You got it.
What is that? What does that stand for again?
It's like the CSU initiative creating intercontinental rural and extension network. So I forget the exact acronym, but they're bringing in folks from across the Americas to talk about rural extension.
Yeah, and it's going to be the largest tour that we've ever hosted. I think somewhere around 60 to 80 people, but super excited that we get to kind of showcase what we're doing a little bit differently on the Eastern Plains. So yeah, I'm finding the utility of farm tours to be much more than just showcasing what we do, but really building kind of intercultural exchange and knowledge exchange, and feels like we're really much more part of a greater community.
Thank you, Roberto. Since I know David's driving a truck, I'll see if he's available, and that way he doesn't have to concern himself. So David, if you're available to share in between loads, that'd be great. Or we will come back to David. Simon.
Okay, just a few things that are going on here in Southwest Colorado. We've got about 3 weeks left for our water delivery. I think we're going to be about October 30th. So that ties into, we finished up our 4th alfalfa cutting, and we're going to get a partial 5th, we hope, here in a week to 10 days on about 700 to 800 acres. on our 5th cutting. We are planting now, as we speak, probably about 150 acres in to 1,200 acres of red winter wheat that we're going to plant here this fall, and hopefully have most of it in by the end of the month, at least give it a shot of water. All the water has been off on the corn for a couple of weeks. So here in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting our corn harvest. Close to 1,300 on the yellow, white, and blue. So it's looking well. The white didn't do as well as we anticipated, but this is 2 years in a row. But the yellow looks good, and the blue is going to be just fine. The cattle's making its way down this week from the high country. I think some of our cows that were up at Pinecrest, that was brought up earlier, are coming home on the mesa, and then they'll make their way down to the farm here in the next couple of weeks. So the cattle are, that weather's changing when the cows start to come home. So it's that time of year now here. And like I said, irrigation's doing well. I think it was a good season. We had our full water allocation. And this might tie back a little bit to what Hollis was talking about earlier on the CDA initiatives. This is one of those years that availability of our irrigation water is really high. The last couple of years, we experienced a drought. Now we had our full water. It looks like we're going to go into the season with probably a good sign of a very good water year for next year. So the irrigation water is our biggest challenge. And I think one thing that we've learned is the availability to generate more money by raising crops than what it costs to produce them. So what we're really having to be careful now is our input costs and where they're at and pertaining to what our profitability is on our crop end. The cattle are doing well, but it's the crops that we have to be really careful on what our input costs are to what we're getting in the open market. I think we did fine on our hay this year, and the wheat did well. The corn prices look like they're staying fine. So I think going through this year, we didn't know going into the year what it would have cost as far as drought wise. Our hay was a little lower than we thought. The wheat price is where we thought it would be. The corn price is right now a little higher than I thought they would be, but they have dropped a little bit. We did our annual, and I don't talk much about our cathodic protection on all our lateral systems, but we had our annual survey, and the anodes that we do put in are having to be replaced constantly. But I think it's really important in the area that we're at that we take care of our lateral system that feeds our pivots. So it's a constant survey that they do quarterly and then annually to let us know where we're at as far as our cathodic protection on our pipelines. We've got 2 micro hydro units that we are continually working on. The turbines are on site, and all the electrical panels are on their way. So hopefully here by the end of the year, I'll have something to report on the number 4 and 5 of the micro hydro units in place. And I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you, Simon.
You're welcome.
I think I lost David completely, so I must have scared him off. So, Nick, we hope your back is feeling better. Can you share with what's going on in your neighborhood?
Well, unfortunately, my back's not better, but I got some relatively good news. I had a surgical consult about a week ago, and doesn't look like I need surgery, but they also can't tell me what's going on. So a little frustrating there, but just got to deal with it, I guess, for the time being. Trying all the different Eastern medicine stuff, which has been an experience. Looked like poltergeist the other day with the acupuncture needles poking out of my head, and so we'll get it figured out one way or another. But evidently, agriculture is hard on people's bodies, is what they tell me. So a pretty similar update to everybody else. Agriculture is just buzzing right now. Everybody's getting crops out, cattle moved. we're going into winter really well, with a really good stockpile. And I think most of Eastern Colorado, everybody's pretty much got a pretty good winter forage outlook. We'll see what El Nino winter brings us, but hay prices are down significantly from last year, which is very welcome. Commodity prices, cattle market's still really good. It's fall off a little bit. I think things are pretty good around here. Starting to see some farmers poke around, dusting wheat in, and even a few places with some wheat that's up. So kind of dry around here. We haven't had much moisture in the last 45 days. So I'm sure all the wheat farmers are wishing for a little bit of wet snow right now. But other than that, everything's pretty good around here.
That's great, Nick. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Jeff.
Yeah, I'm finally able to get out of my shell here a little bit and get away from harvest. We wrapped up last Thursday, which was a sigh of relief. It was pretty exhausting harvest for us. So definitely like to apologize for missing that September meeting. I had good intentions to be there virtually, but every time I went to hop on, something else would break. So it's kind of the way farming goes sometimes, unfortunately. So as far as the crop goes, the barley crop came off really nice. From what I hear, all the guys got it in and didn't get any rain. Potato crop started off really well. We had a nice rainstorm that slowed us down that first week of harvest for us, which would have been about the second week of September. We got more rain in that second week of September than we did all summer. We ended up with about 1.5 inches of rain, which slowed us down a little bit, but overall it was a really good harvest. Then it dried out and everybody was able to get their crop in really well. Yields were up across the valley here, potato wise. We harvested the biggest crop of potatoes that we have ever harvested on our farm, which was pretty nice surprise. So thankfully we had built some storage this summer and we were able to fill up all of our new storage and all of our old storage. So we've got quite a pile to sell. Which kind of presents the challenge. Other growing areas around the country have the same good problem that we have. Everybody had really good yields. So we come off of last year with the lowest supply of potatoes in the country that we've seen to this year looks like the highest supply of potatoes that the country has ever seen. So going from really good prices last year to looks like potentially some very challenging prices this year. As far as our aquifer goes, water table is a net zero. So we didn't gain anything off of our good winter last year. We pumped it down to net zero gain. So definitely a challenge as far as water is concerned. Talking with the cattle guys, are coming out of the mountains now. Everybody's starting to bring them home, and with a good winter or a good summer in the mountains for all the cattle guys. Yeah, just everything's pretty good down here.
Great. I'm glad you had good harvest. That's really important. So that's great.
Yeah, safe harvest, no problems. So yeah. That's very thankful for that.
That's the key, the safe piece. Yes. Elena, your world?
I always do this on my phone because my computers are always like broken or something, but it's like trying to find the unmute button is always a challenge. So anyway, thank you so much. And everyone, you all are awesome and doing really great things. So everything's good. We did get that rain that in September, which was great, but the number one on the Alamosa River is curtailed. So that's how bad the water situation is, that we're basically getting I think like 15 CFS into the reservoir, and with 55+% loss along the river, there's just like hardly any water. So trying to get all the crops in good water is going to be an interesting experiment. We're basically just like alternating what we're watering. Can't really water what it needs, but hopefully we can keep it alive for the winter. So anyway, yeah, I just got back from it used to be the Taos Wool Festival, sadly, and moved to Santa Fe, which I'm not so happy about, but it was really fun. And it's fun to see a lot of producers there making value-added products, wool and all kinds of stuff there. And it was a really fun time, although I'm sad that it's not in Taos anymore. So that was a really great experience. And then excited in November, I'm going to be presenting at the Quivira Coalition with Jeannie Carver, who's Shanika Wools, which is an awesome wool company if you haven't checked them out, because they really, Jeannie has basically worked to get wool into more mainstream lines, such as, I don't know what she's worked with exactly, but she's gotten like wool into some of the Olympics, into some of the competitive and athletic apparel that they're using for bigger competitions. And so I'm very humbled to be presenting with her, because I'm just a small little producer, and she's definitely representing like a really amazing success story as far as how to take a small idea, value-added idea, and take it into these bigger markets. So that's exciting. And then I've been having, I love the stories about Chile, Kate. That's so awesome. CSU Extension actually down here ended up with an intern from Colombia, and her and I have been hanging out a lot, and it's really interesting. I feel like I'm learning so much from her. And especially, Kate, you touched on this, how Chile follows our legislative leadership, but learning how, especially subsidized free food that we use as like food aid into developing countries can be really damaging to rural economies there, because it's hard to compete with free. And when we flood the market with that subsidized product, she was saying that especially potatoes, corn, and milk get often given free, because it is an American subsidized program, and it's done as food aid, and it really can undermine local agriculture, which is interesting because I've kind of heard that also from Mexico, that can actually create some problems. And a lot of the immigration crisis that we see is just because a lot of those rural economies are really struggling. So I thought that was really interesting. Somebody once told me, like, the United States, we don't really export product, but we export culture. And so I think that just brings home the importance of how we write our story and how we create our ag system has effects throughout the world. And I think that really makes that responsibility of making sure that we're really looking at equity and looking at sustainability, and also recognizing the consequences that we can, I think food aid, it's meant to be this wonderful thing. And it's interesting to see this negative consequence that she talked about. And she also, this is not related to local ag, but she also talked about the idea of like the hermano menor, like the younger brother, and kind of the role that indigenous cultures are taking leadership roles in Colombia, and really kind of changing the conversation about land ethics and the respect that they are getting through their different worldview. And I thought that was a really interesting and beautiful concept that she was talking about, with a lot of political parties gaining support who are led by indigenous communities or have a lot of indigenous support, and kind of those different worldviews and concepts. So anyway, she's awesome, and it's really been fun learning from her. And then kind of unrelated, but just like community minded, I have been talking with a lot of meat processors, and they have shared just the major struggle that it is to be USDA certified. And I actually, this is my ignorance, but they are inspected by the state. And is that CDA? I don't know. And they say that process is just really awesome and really supportive. And I'm not sure if it's CDA, so I apologize if that's my ignorance, but just their desire to be USDA and just really facing struggles, and then also having that huge overhead as far as USDA. So I think that's something that I'm taking home, of like, the producer the processor situation has been a real bottleneck for producers, because there are so few of them and it's so hard to get into them. And I really think that removing those barriers of like why people aren't going through this process to make that more accessible would just be huge. And so anyway, I wasn't sure if it was CDA, but I was guessing it was. And if it is, it has good feedback, or I wasn't sure if it's like FT, I didn't know. Anyway, but they did say that the USDA process is just like absolutely cumbersome and really inaccessible. So yeah, I don't know.
Melina, we do custom exempt inspections, and Hollis used to oversee that program. Mark Gallegos now does. So it very likely could have been CDA with that facility.
Yeah, I'll double check with him, but he did say it was a really easy process and that the people were very helpful and any uncompliances were dealt with in a really collaborative way instead of a combative way. So yeah, but it would be really wonderful to see because I think that would open up so many markets, especially with the USDA part, because that opens up, the retail market. And a lot of producers don't even like try because they're just like, I don't want to, it's just so much more work. So I think it would be cool to see a way that the meat processing can be done. And I think people find a way, but it would be really neat to see that be a little bit more accessible. So anyway, well, thank you for everything if it is CDA, because I think it has good reviews.
Thank you, Elena. I think David is on his phone, so let's see if he's able to share with us.
Melissa, does he need to hit *6?
Yeah.
David,
I think
might need to hit
for Zoom.
*6. Yeah.
There we go.
You got me this time? Okay.
There we go.
I tried to respond to you, Pauline, and my Zoom went out, so I had to call back in on the call number that time, or this time, because I couldn't get Zoom to come back. I apologize. I'm kind of losing my voice, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Potato harvest is kind of wrapping up out here. Edible bean harvest is getting close to being done as well. Regular beet harvest just started yesterday, as a matter of fact. But believe it or not, like today we got shut down because of heat at noon because not conducive to storing beets when they get above the 50 degrees. So we're shut down until tomorrow morning. Also, we're kind of learning that the yields, tonnage, and the sugars are down in the silage and the beets. Hershey and millet crops are kind of wrapping up as well. Corn silage is all but done around here. There's a few guys starting to do some earlage harvest, putting that away for their cattle. And wet corn harvest is probably right in the middle. There's some dry land corn starting to be harvested as well. That's, actually dry corn. Milo harvest, probably about 50% done in the area. Pumpkin harvest is kind of finishing up. We had a really light frost last week, and that kind of, even though it was real light, it did pretty much frost those pumpkin vines. So it didn't hurt the pumpkins per se, but they're out getting all those gathered up, trying to wrap up that harvest. We're supposed to possibly get down to about 26, 27 degrees here on, I believe, Thursday night or Friday night. So that'll be I guess we'd say a hard freeze, depending on how long it stays. But that should kind of finish up the rest of the crops and any plants or vegetation that aren't protected. So that's kind of right on schedule. That's about our normal frost date, actually. Wheat and cereal crops are about done getting drilled and planted. Some places it's very dry. People just dusted their wheat in, hoping to get a rain. There's other places where we had a few of those storms go through earlier in September there or whatever. They had some moisture around there. Some of those crops are up, really green, looking good already on the dryland side. Let's see here. Oh yeah, on pumpkin harvest too. That's a nice thing about fall, seeing a lot of corn mazes and activities with pumpkins and things throughout northeast Colorado. There's a lot of family oriented corn mazes and things like that out there as well. Cattle are doing pretty good as well. In general, it was a good summer for pasture. It has turned dry here lately, but people are starting to wean their calves and either backgrounding them or starting to take them to the market. You're starting to see the numbers pick up at the local sale barns, the people that usually sell their cattle. So some of the cattle will soon be getting on the after feed here as harvest goes on and getting out to winter pastures. Still kind of having the labor issues. It's hard to find harvest help. I should say kind of, it is hard to find harvest help. So, you know, of course, the farmers and everybody are putting in a lot of overtime to do that. So we just, you know, pray for everybody's safety and hopefully everybody gets their rest. Even in the trade industry, it's, I think I've mentioned this before too, but, you know, plumbers, electricians, et cetera, HVAC people, a lot of people maybe have retired out this way or passed on, and they don't have a younger generation to take over, and or if they have retired, things like that. So it's getting very hard to find plumbers and electricians, et cetera, to do a lot of the work. So a lot of times when you call somebody, if you want to do some projects, it's pretty hard to get somebody around here. Maybe you can get them for emergency stuff, but if you really want to do a project, we're starting to reach out, you know, to, you know, the Front Range, Denver and stuff like that, which is over 2.5 hours away. But the costs of the travel and everything like that really add to the projects, and they have their own projects going up there. So sometimes they're saying it could be 6 to 8 weeks after you call somebody before they may even come take a look and see if they can help you out down the road. With that being said, too, we had some hail storms go through this summer. And actually, even on the insurance side, it's amazing. They said that they do not have any help in this area to come itemize like the vehicles and things. So they're starting to do programs where they want you to take your own pictures of your vehicles, get your own itemized repairs, budget or bills, and then they'll present them to them through email, et cetera, to the insurance companies. And then they'll discuss with you, you know, if they can get you paid on your under your hail insurance. So things like that are very, very frustrating, actually. So you're all, you know, you pay for insurance and things like that to help cover some things like that, and then when it comes down to it, you have to do all the work on top of it to try to get some of your damages paid for. As far as local stuff going on, there was a county-sponsored agritourism lunch and promotion today. Obviously, I was in a truck. I was in a beet truck this morning, corn truck this afternoon, but so I couldn't make it. But I sent my better half down there and to cover for me, just to kind of listen on what's going on there. And actually, it was her birthday, so bless her heart for doing that for me today. Also attended. This is some of the things I was talking about earlier, like on a solar deal. I attended a solar community meeting here a couple of weeks ago, and there was an outfit coming out here. They would like to put in a project out here, and they've talked to several neighbors and things like that, and they're going through the processes, and everything's looking good. They're going through planning and zoning commissions, et cetera. And then they'll, you know, ultimately in the end, I guess, if you will, they have to, if everything goes good there, they'll talk to the commissioners. But this is where I brought up some of this earlier. It was amazing. You know, some of the community comments were, you know, to them were, you know, well, can you access livestock or things like that to have grazing underneath your solar panels, et cetera? Have you have experience in that? And it was kind of amazing, I guess, and that's not the right word, but to me, it's actually kind of a shock that they hadn't even thought of it. It was just like they were just going to come out, you know, wanting to rent land or buy land to put their project on. And, you know, that kind of bothers us in the ag community, you know, where we take land away from production ag and things like that, where maybe the two could coincide with livestock or cropping plans or et cetera underneath. But it really brought that to a point to me with this company, and I'm sure there's others the same way, but that's kind of what I was talking about on some of the earlier questions I'd asked today. And I think it's kind of interesting going forward. I think we do need to work with people like that. And I'm actually surprised that they hadn't been talked about or talked in conversation with somebody about something like that before. So other than that, just pray for all the people that are out harvesting, and hopefully everybody has a good fall. Thanks for listening to my long-winded conversation.
Thank you, David, and have a safe harvest. Catherine, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the solar companies that work in Colorado are licensed in Colorado. Did they have to go through any licensing? Does anybody know? Because some sort of education about solar and agriculture might be well, because I know a project's going on a piece of property that I lease, and they actually, and I don't know who required it, they severed the water rights from the property as they went in and moved into solar, which I thought was really weird, because I said I would continue to lease it if I could graze under it, and apparently that's not that's not an option. So just a thought.
Yeah, Catherine. Oh, sorry, Colleen.
No, you go ahead, Kate. Go.
Well, I was just going to say that we're looking at it from a couple of different angles. One is engaging solar companies, which I think, we have less capacity to do right now. We have a lot of one-off relationships in our Acre 3 projects, but less sort of comprehensive. Another route is county commissioners. I mean, I think Delta County continues to be the example for me where DMEA and a solar company out there proposed, I think, a 400 and something acre solar farm. The commissioners denied it unanimously. They came back with an agrivoltaic pitch for the same acreage and 1,000 head of sheep under the solar panels, and it was approved unanimously. So counties, planning and zoning are also sort of key areas to educate and work with, and we're working a lot with Colorado CCI, the Colorado Counties Inc., on this question that you posed, Catherine.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Meade had a situation with a solar company wanting to put up some panels just west of Meade. And I did question at a town meeting, Meade Town Council meeting, had they considered what was going to be going underneath their cover crop, those kind of things. Did invite the mayor to go tour with me Jack's solar farm. Never got a response back from her. So, but I'm not going to let it go because, we want to make sure that ag stays in the Meade community. And so I think it was like David brought up a question that I don't think they'd really thought about what's going on with the ground underneath and things that can happen with it. So good job, David, for staying on top of that. And Catherine, that's a good question. So we'll continue to see how we can make that happen.
Yeah, and Colleen, just to emphasize that point, I mean, I think you all play a really important role out in your communities pushing the question. And getting folks to think about this question in county commission meetings with the companies that are pitching, their proposals. And David, to your point, we're not looking for an either or, we're looking for a both and solution, but it can't be without ag at the table, looking at these better options in some circumstances. So thanks for planting that seed in a lot of folks' minds.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. I agree with you. Ag needs to be at that table also. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think I'm the one left. So a few thank yous. First of all, Catherine, thank you for organizing the meeting in Grand Junction last month, and Hollis and team, great job on your presentation that night. And also, Catherine, thank you for organizing the tour of the packing house. That was a good thing for us to go and experience. So, and Melissa, you do a wonderful job organizing everything for all of us, and you are going to be sorely missed because I am probably your biggest thorn in your side occasionally when I send you an email and saying I've lost this or I can't find this. So we're going to miss you, but we know you're just down the hall, so that's good. I see George's hand going up, so I'll let him speak before and then I'll finish up.
All I wanted to do is just, with all the change going on at CDA and especially at the brand board, with Chris leaving and Mr. Mendenhall passing away, who was on the board, I think it would really be good for all of the commission members to get an update on how the brand board actually works and how that whole part of the CDA functions. And because it looks like we're in for a lot of change there. And I think if everybody was sort of up to date on how that whole process works, it would really be helpful maybe as we go forward. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea, George. I would agree, and see if we can get that on an agenda. Yeah, thumbs up from Kate. Good. So anyway, and thank you to all of you for changing the meeting date for this, for instead of tomorrow, for today. What's going on around here is the corn silage harvest is wrapping up. Like David was talking about, sugar beets are being dug, but once again, because of the temperature, they're being cut off usually, by mid-morning because of the warmer temperatures. A lot of wheat is in the ground, and everybody is looking forward to hopefully some moisture on Thursday. So that's a hope. I guess the big thing that I wanted to share with you, and we kind of anticipated this coming, but the Coors elevator here, it's about, I want to say it's about 8-9 miles west of us, has been there for forever, it seems like. They are making some changes. They are going to be shutting down the elevator. Changes will stay the same for 2024, so we can still haul there. But a lot of changes happening. After 2024, farmers will be asked to store in their own bins. I have a fly that's bothering me, so if you keep seeing me do this, that's what's going on. Farmers will be asked to store their own barley, which is, I'd say about 50-50 around here. Some farmers do store and some don't. It's going to affect us because we will not be storing. But it was an interesting year enough that we were questioning whether we were going to continue contracting with the Coors. So I think that's still a question mark in the office across my house here of what we're going to do. We'll have to be making some decisions pretty soon, though, because the contracts are going to be coming out. I took a screenshot of what they shared with us the other day at the growers meeting. Some personnel changes. Some personnel is moving over to San Luis Valley, to the Montrose area. On site there, some transition. They'll have staff at our facility this year for harvest, and but it'll be just for that time frame. And then from then on, from 2025, everybody will have to determine their own storage. The bins will be sampled post-harvest, and then the barley that's being accepted, they will bring in commercial trucks for us if we want to siphon it out that way, and it'll be going directly to the Golden malting plant. They're investigating a sale of this elevator that's up here, and I guess they've already had some entertainment of some people being property, and there will be no permanent staff at the elevator. So big changes around here. Coors has been a big part of this community and the Front Range for many, many years. And we'll see what the transition is. This is going to affect some people greatly on what they're going to choose to grow. We've got a friend who does a lot of the trucking for Coors, and he probably had the most shocked look face that I saw that day. I don't think they had told him yet. So, talking to a lot of farmers when they were leaving there, you could tell a lot of them are scratching their head trying to decide what's going to be the substitute crop. This is going to affect the corn markets around, and the corn growing around here. And I'm anticipating we'll see some different kind of crops along the Front Range where it won't be brewing barley. So that's the big one for us around here. Hollis, Kansas City saw you at Aggie Days, so that was fun. So it's good to see that representation was there for at Colorado State for Aggie Days. I believe that's all I have. So with that, we are at adjournment portion of the meeting. So if I can get a motion to adjourn.
I assume
Madam Chair,
I think Elena motioned, and I think David second is the way I saw it come in. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, it was great to see all of you. We will see you in Denver in November. And keep in mind, look for Melissa's email identifying what is the best date for everybody to meet on there.
Okay.
All right, everybody have a great
See you, everybody.
week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
You too.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.